I do think it's going to be possible in our lifetime, maybe sooner rather than later, to create a very parallel humanity, but that is mechanical instead of organic. So I could give you a list of areas that I think in the next 1 to 3 or 5 years, humans are still the de facto like decision maker. But further than that, I'm just really not sure. And I'm not saying this is a good news, by the way. I'm just
Mm.
saying realistically, I don't think that there is really a technical limit to how far we can take this.
Work is changing quickly, irreversibly, and often invisibly. I'm Chris Fanchi, and this show is about understanding where it's headed and how we stay human in the process. Hello and welcome to Human Work After AI, the show where we explore the future of work, technology, and what it means to stay human in the age of AI. We're speaking with founders, technologists, and thinkers who are navigating the shift toward an AI-powered economy. Today's guest is Alex Teplitxky, a marketing leader in the world of construction technology. Alex currently leads marketing and business development at SmartPM Technologies, a company on a mission to fight costly project delays through automation, analytics, and smarter insights. He's also held leadership roles at Procore, Autodesk, and Alice Technologies, helping build some of the most important names in construction tech. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
So I always like to start with my guests' background or origin story, as it were. What first got you into technology, and then what brought you into construction tech specifically?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think as much as I want to say that I was always interested in technology, I think, my dad was kind of in that pioneer area of Silicon Valley. He, lived in Cupertino, San Jose, Sunnyvale, where all these old school tech companies were. I was actually growing up in Paris, France, so a completely different world. But I would visit Silicon Valley every summer of my life growing up. So very exposed to that world of tech. And I think it was just exotic and sounded really cool. So when I moved to the US and California at 18, I was just bathing in that world. It's really hard to escape technology when, you spend years of your life in the Bay Area. So I was surrounded by that, and that probably formed a lot of my opinions and thoughts and passions. And there I was. I started a company myself. I had a startup right after college and stayed in that world and found it fascinating ever since.
So how did you find your way into construction tech specifically?
Yeah. So I was never looking for construction tech specifically, admittedly. I had a friend back in 2012 recommend me to join this company, Autodesk. And I knew Autodesk because of, actually, I didn't know Autodesk. I knew AutoCAD, the design software, but I didn't really know Autodesk. But from one thing to another, I joined Autodesk, the leader in AEC software, so architecture, engineering, and construction software. Worked there for 4 years, and around that time, a project management company, Procore, which kind of became the biggest name in project management
Mm.
software for the construction industry, they were coming up on the map. I joined that company in 2018. So now I have Autodesk, now I have Procore. So now recruiters are starting to pay attention to that. And after Procore, I went to another construction tech company called Alice Technology, which was the pioneer in AI for construction scheduling optimization. And I just, as I was learning more about all these workflows in construction, I became fascinated by it because it was at least a very underserved industry when it comes to tech. So, if you're in the Bay Area, you are working on solving problems in other industries typically. So construction wasn't really top of mind for anyone. But when you realize that it's the third largest industry in the world, it employs over 200 million people on the planet. So how can you ignore? How can Silicon Valley, how can all the builders around the world, the software builders, ignore that industry? So I became fascinated. I am kind of an optimizer at heart. So when I see something that's not well optimized, my brain just kind of shakes up. It's like, whoa, we could do something a little bit different, a little bit better here. And when I saw a lot of the kind of like analog processes that rule that industry, or at least 10 years ago, I just found it fascinating. I thought, wow, like even as a homeowner, right? Like you're working on a project outside and you're seeing how things are done and you realize there's a lot of the cost of this project that's connected to outdated processes. Like a lot of my hard earned money is literally going to useless data entry or double data entry or some sort of systems that are not connected to one another, which mean that there's somebody in the office talking to another person, exchanging information that isn't really that useful directly to your project being done, but it has to be done and you're paying for it. And so in my mind, I was like,
Mm.
wow, how much of this is happening on planet Earth? Like, you're building a hospital. How much of that time and cost is actually building the hospital? And how much of that time and cost is dealing with thousands of other processes or paper, something physically on paper moving from one place to the other, someone typing what's on that paper on a computer, exchanging that file, communicating, reporting, all that kind of stuff. So I just found it fascinating. And I thought there are definitely better ways. Of course, I'm saying a lot of people thought that. So I just joined companies who figured that out first. But I thought it was a really cool problem to rally behind. And so now here I am as Smart PM, the leader in automated project controls. So we help that. We help fight delays and cost overrun in construction. And we do that by providing a platform that automates a lot of the calculations that are necessary to understand how a project is going. Is it going well? Is
Mm.
it not going well? What's the story? Typically requires hours, days, weeks of manual calculations, and we automate all that process. Hence, we can put our finger on the problems early enough to do something about it and hopefully save people and company money.
So you've been in construction for a good while, at least 13 years now. So how have you seen it change as we've been watching technology advance so rapidly? How has that impacted construction from your perspective, someone that's been in it that whole time?
I mean, hugely. It's incomparable, 10 years ago to today. Even, I mean, everybody's talking about AI now, right? I mean, 4 years ago, you would talk about AI and people would look at you like with a side eye. And, they knew it was a concept, but they're like, no, no, we're construction. We don't deal with that stuff. Right. And like now everybody's talking about AI. Years ago, there were basic project management platforms that basically take it was a replica of what's happening on a piece of paper and putting that on an iPad or on a laptop. That was step one. And it was very basic. It was, digitizing your specification books, digitizing your diagrams, like obviously all the drawings and designs. And today there are over 5,000 companies, startups, medium-sized, large companies. They do anything from AI-driven drones, robots, I mean, all sorts of robotics that crawl, fly around the job site. They're taking photos, they're monitoring for safety issues, they're monitoring progress, they're catching delays, they're catching if people are they wearing their gloves, are they wearing their hard hat, are they wearing their steel-toe shoes. Um, you've got software that solves every little workflow out there. I mean, budgeting, invoicing, pre-qualification, uh, quality issues, equipment management. I mean, there's almost every use case you can think of. There's a company that you attach a hardware to your crane and it monitors the amount of time that the crane is being used, how much load is on that crane, to optimize how cranes are used. There's equivalent software for your excavators and for there's software for your tools, the tools being lost, making sure that you have the right tools at the right place at the right time. So it's absolutely evolved. You know, talking about construction tech now is it's cool, right? Like 5 years ago, it wasn't really an era where a lot of people wanted to go work in. And now it is actually cool. It's interesting. People are realizing this is not a small industry. There there are a lot of really cool challenges, and there's money to be made, right? Like it's not a niche. So yeah, it's evolved tremendously. I mean, we went from one or two venture capital groups to many, many now. Lots of industry organizations, dozens and dozens of conferences dedicated to construction tech. So it's really It's really been exponential growth in the last few.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I had a previous guest on the podcast that's in the construction industry and talked about, there's this mentality or this belief within the public that construction is just this backwards, still very manual, old school industry. But the reality is construction is actually very high tech, especially on the job site. It's almost more on the administrative side that the technology's been slow to catch up. Do you feel like that's the case from what you've seen?
100%. I think it's been very unfortunate and very unfair how the general population has probably treated construction as, you know, and I think there's reports out there that perpetuate that belief. I mean, you look at I believe it's a McKinsey report that talks about the order of digitization of different industries, and construction is second to last. Only hunting is less digitized. But that really doesn't tell the full story at all. There's so
Mm.
much technology used on projects. I mean, it's actually very impressive. There are software platforms and hardware and robotics that are created just for the purpose of one single project sometimes. I mean, people create, AI assisted robots that'll crawl into the ground to assist in different, I don't know, like figuring out the feasibility of a project. So they'll create like little robots that nobody else has invented or created, or with software that nobody else has invented either. And we're saying that they're so backwards, so little digitized. That's just not the case. But one thing is for sure is that, when you talk about finance or marketing or healthcare, I mean, other areas, let's take finance. It's so much easier to digitize finance. It's just numbers.
Mm.
It's much easier to create software like Excel where you're just digitizing a balance sheet. Now, think about digitizing a job site and all the components of a job site. That's a lot more complex. There are thousands more variables, and that's why it was very difficult to create a digital equivalent and software solutions to solve problems for that whole industry. And we're finally getting to that point now.
So, talk a little bit more about where Smart PM fits into the whole construction process and the workflows. What are you guys really solving with your product?
Yeah, absolutely. So we, like I said, we're an automated project controls platform. So what that means is that we take schedule file, which we believe the schedule file is the most important, the most comprehensive data set in construction. We take that native file and we upload it into our system. So the baseline schedule, which is the first schedule that's created, as well as all the subsequent updates, so every week or every month, depending on the cadence. And our software analyzes basically the differences between the baseline and all the updates. Where should a project be a month in, 2 months in, 3 months in, and where is it actually now? So are we meeting
Mm.
expectations? Are we on track? So that sounds very, very simple, but there are actually hundreds of different variables and metrics that we look at in order to answer questions around the performance of the project. So it could either be tracking the performance at the project level, so the one project you're working on, or tracking the performance of your whole portfolio. Do you have regions in which you have maybe a problem area? Let's say you're building hospitals around the country, but you're noticing that in California, your hospitals are a little bit behind. Why is that? Right? Could this have something to do with the quality of the schedule itself? So we analyze the quality of the schedule. Is it missing logic? It's looking at 40 different variables that assesses the quality and the feasibility of a schedule. So the person or the people who put that original schedule together, did they do it in a way that followed best practices? And is that schedule actually reliable? Can you rely on that schedule to confidently say, this hospital is going to be completed when they say it will be completed on June 1st? We can actually give you that answer. We could tell you right off the bat, there's a pretty good chance that if I'm looking at this file, we won't know. There's no way that we can rely on this schedule. So if you're relying on it, you're not in a great position to start with. So one of the first steps for us is to help companies, whether it's on the owner side or the general contractor side or on the consulting side, we help them create better schedules. So understand where they're at now, fixing those files. Once they have a clean data set that you can use and rely on, we help you monitor progress of your project before it's too late. So typically, a lot of the reporting on project progress happen um, retrospectively. So
Mm.
you work for a month or two, and then you do this analysis, and you say, okay, this is where we are now. Well, we're behind. Well, wouldn't you want to know that information as you're building? So maybe instead of reporting it a month later, you report it every week, and you say, hey guys, looks like we're not on track. So the next week and the week after that, let's take those corrective measures so that we close out the month on track. And guess what? Things never usually get better once you don't. Once it starts getting bad and you're not monitoring it, it
Mm.
just kind of avalanches. So we really help you stay on track, surface all those insights because that's really, really hard to do manually. I mean, there's a lot of stress in construction. And so a lot of times it's just about putting out fires and the reporting and the analysis of what's going on usually just takes a back seat. It doesn't happen because everybody's way too busy and because it's way too time consuming to do manually. So we take all that stress away from you. We automate a lot of it. We help you make sense of your data. We surface stuff for you. All you have to do is look at it, interpret it, analyze it, and make those decisions from that data you're seeing and actually fix the problem in time.
So, what role then? It sounds like AI is definitely doing a lot of the heavy lifting within your system. Is that accurate to say?
It's a piece of it. It's not fully AI. It's a lot of math. So there's a
Mm.
lot of math. Our founder and CEO Michael Pink was a consultant for about 20 years. So he's worked on hundreds of projects, spent way too many hours doing all the manual analysis and calculations to understand the story behind a project. So, clients would come to him, give him stacks of schedules and just different project documents and be like, here, tell us what happened. Like, who's responsible for the delay? And he would go and manually do it. So he took basically he transcribed, I guess, or turned from an analog process to a digitized process what he was doing. And so
Mm.
a lot of it is calculations. And then there is an AI layer on top of that. We of course embraced Gen AI as well. So we have a bot called Foreman that you can ask questions to. So you can say, hey, what's driving my critical path right now? Or why is my project delayed? And our AI will use the exact data from our from the project file to give you an answer. So it's not hallucinating, it's not pulling answers out of thin air. It's literally just taking the data that you put in and answering those questions for you. So we do have some AI, but also lots of math and plain old algorithms that have existed for a long time.
Okay. At Alice Technologies, you were early in generative AI for construction, correct?
Yeah, it was we called it generative scheduling. So it's
Mm.
and we actually used the term generative scheduling before ChatGPT really became popular. And so then, you know, Gen AI became popular and there was a lot of confusion for a time because people would just assume, well, generative scheduling is kind of like generative AI, the way they thought about it with
Mm.
ChatGPT. But that was a little bit different. The idea there was you take a 3D design, so a 3D design file called a BIM model, and you
Mm.
would put that into the system, and the system would take your PD file and auto magically generate the perfect project schedule based off of what it's seeing on that BIM file. So very different application of AI, a very niche and different than ChatGPT.
Yeah, yeah. How has the conversation about AI changed since then within the construction industry? You talk about how it's a big topic now. How have you seen it change since you were at Alice?
Yeah, it's really funny. When we started talking about AI at Alice, it was really like trying to push this gigantic boulder uphill, right? I mean, you had to, it's like construction, they live in well, not everybody, but a lot of people like they live in the real and the tangible world. And then they kind of consider the software folks, they're like, yeah, you guys are just, keyboard and mice people. Like we actually work with tools, we actually build real things. So your AI thing is kind of cute, but like that's not what we do. Like, so that was a lot of the conversation back then. And there was a lot of belief that just the systems weren't ready, that, this whole concept of garbage in, garbage out would come up a lot where it's like, well, how does your AI know how to give me, the right answers? Like, we're not even exactly sure what to give it. So we don't trust
Mm,
this data. Like it's a big black box. And that has completely changed. I mean, I think Chat GPT gets a lot of credit because it really has changed our collective consciousness to realize, crap, like the technology is there. Even if it's a different technology, right? Like not everybody is
mm,
using Gen AI like ChatGPT. We all have different flavors of AI, but people now believe that the capability is there overall to give like really, really impressive results, right? Like I don't think anybody today can question, like 3 years ago, people would say, oh, AI will never do my job. And I think that's changed a lot. Now people are like, shoot, AI can definitely do my job. And oftentimes AI can do it way better than me. So, again, you've got 200 million people working in the construction industry at large. That's a lot of different roles. Some roles are relatively untouched, but then many other roles within the construction industry are completely disrupted. I mean, imagine you are the person writing a request for proposal or answering an RFP, and you're sifting through hundreds of PDF documents, right? Hundreds of pages. That's just reading, right? And you're reading 300 pages, trying to understand, like, hey, is this project risky or not? Or, hey, do you think do you think we could win this project? I mean, that's a lot of analysis. Guess what? You upload that file in ChatGPT, you have some rules in your prompt, you get the answer within 30 seconds. So that's real disruption for a
mm,
lot of people. And the other thing, too, is a few years ago, uh, if we reached out to a company and said, hey, we'd love to present to you our, we don't say AI solution, but let's just assume we were say, hey, we'd like to talk to you about a solution we have. It's really interesting AI. 3 years ago, it would have been like, sorry, AI is not top of mind for us. Today, even if the solution that we're providing isn't necessarily top of mind for them, their boss or their boss's boss probably said, hey guys, I want to figure out what to do with this AI thing. So figure it
mm,
out. Come back to me with some plan, some strategy about how we're going to implement AI this year. And so as soon as they hear AI, they're like, wait, maybe I should listen. Maybe this should be part of our tech stack this year. So yes, they're very open. They go to, even within construction, they go to conferences that are dedicated to AI for construction, and people listen. I mean, there's a lot of fluff, right? But
mm.
they listen when we have something interesting to say.
Have you found that that's changed just this year? I feel like that's what I'm hearing from a lot of different people is just in the year 2025, the conversation it's maybe hit that tipping point or kind of flipped where it went from AI is kind of it'd be nice to have, it's still kind of out there, a little nebulous to now it's like everyone is curious or needing to implement it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big factor this year was the focus on agentic AI, right? So I
Mm,
think last year, AI was definitely on lots of minds already, but it wasn't necessarily usable by everyone. And I think today with agentic AI, a lot of companies are realizing that they can build their own agents and use their own data within their company and actually sometimes replace a lot of software solutions that typically would charge them a lot of money. So
mm,
there's a lot of conversation around data privacy or proprietary data sets. And, construction is an industry that doesn't necessarily want to share all their data with a bunch of vendors. So I
mhm.
think that they're seeing, hey, what if I could build my own AI agents and not share my data sets with outside vendors and solve all of these challenges on our own? So I'm seeing a lot of that in the last, I would say, not even the last year, honestly, in the last 4 or 5 months, it's changed a
Mm.
lot.
Wow, interesting. Now, you mentioned how many roles within construction are touched by AI and the way things are progressing now. Do you see there being major disruption within the job market in the near future, or do you think there's kind of the other perspective that it's going to free up these people to do a lot of other tasks that were maybe not being done. And so the companies will become more efficient and effective rather than replacing roles that already exist.
That's a very interesting question. Look, I feel like so much of the conversation right now is there's been this like appeasement, like trying to control the panic. Like, oh no, don't worry, it's not going to take your job. It's gonna, it's not AI, it's intelligence augmentation, right? Which it is.
Hmm.
But when you say increase efficiency, I mean, I was just reading this morning a case study. One of our customers was talking about how much money we saved them. We saved them $55 million, and one person can analyze and manage 7 or 8 projects when up until then they were only able to do 3 or 4 projects by themselves. So what
Hmm.
does that mean? That means that if you needed 10 people on staff, well, guess what? Unless you scale your business and have twice as many projects, now you maybe only need 5, right? And so
Yeah.
I don't know that it's going to be necessarily job elimination, but it's going to shift things. There's going to be roles that the teams are going to get smaller, and some other teams are going to get larger. Anecdotally, we and I've started to see this in the news. So we have this huge labor shortage in construction in the U.S. and
Hmm.
worldwide. Typically trade contractors has been kind of positioned almost as like a plan B in a career. So
Hmm.
it's like if you're not good in school, like maybe you can go into the trades, which was also very unfortunate. So anyway, there's been many reasons for which there's been a huge labor shortage, and it's really bad. It's really negative for the industry. And this year, we're seeing more college graduates than ever going into the trades because they don't think that having an office job is a good career movement. Huge, right? So this is like
Yeah.
this direct correlation with AI. They're like, why would I go and be a content marketer when someone can just use AI to build all the content. Maybe I should go become a welder and make 80 bucks an hour, right? Like guaranteed rates. So that's been a huge impact. There's no doubt in my mind. I think we're also in this transition phase, right? Like companies want to be very careful about they don't want to do like layoffs that could be directly tied to AI. Some
Mm.
companies are doing it. It's not very popular, but most
Yeah.
companies are kind of doing this like holding pattern right now. We saw that during COVID too, right? Like nobody wanted to be the bad company that laid people off during COVID. But a
Hmm.
few months in, companies started to do it. And then they're like, well, I guess if everybody else is doing it, I'm also going to have my layoffs. And I think there's going to be a little bit of that with AI as well, right? Like a lot of big companies are like, "Ah, would the optics would be bad if we
Yeah.
have layoffs due to AI, but in a year they're going to call it, they're just going to call it like this is how we stay above the competition. This is how we, maximize shareholder value, and they'll do it. So, but again, I think there's going to be other jobs that we're not necessarily thinking about today that are going to appear. It's not all doom and gloom, but there's definitely going to be a lot of rejiggering. And so I think a lot of people should be prepared for the flexibility that is needed in today's job market.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the concept that agility is the most important value for, or adaptability for an employee right now, I think that pretty much sums it up. From your perspective, where will human judgment always remain essential in construction?
Well, you and your listeners might not love my answer, but and this is just my view. Look, I love us as humans. I think we are. I would love to think we're special. But at the end of the day, I also do think we are a machine. We're an organic machine. And I think what we think of as humanity, that definition is actually probably more porous and flexible than we think of it. And I do think it's going to be possible in our lifetime and maybe sooner rather than later to create a very parallel humanity, but that is mechanical instead of organic. So yeah, I could give you a list of areas that I think in the next 1 to 3 or 5 years, humans are still, the de facto like decision maker. But further than that, I'm just really not sure. And I'm not saying this is a good news, by the way. I'm just
Mm,
saying realistically, I don't think that there is really a technical limit to how far we can take this. I mean, I remember again, like 2, 3 years ago, you'd have artists say, like, well, AI could never pop a good joke. And you're like, really? Because what is a joke? A joke is an algorithm, right? You just feed it some variables and AI could give you the best jokes faster than anybody else. AI,
mm,
they said AI couldn't do music. AI does really good music today. And you do a blind test. A lot of people can't tell. They only tell you when they know it's AI. They'll tell you like, oh, I can tell there's no character, there's no personality. But if you do a blind
mm.
test, then they can't tell anymore, right? And so again, I'm not saying this is good or bad. I'm just saying it is what it is. Like maybe humans aren't as special as we thought we were, right? I mean, we're just neurons. We're algorithms, right? We're just organic algorithms, and I do think in our lifetime we'll have the equivalent mechanical algorithms. And I do think in a few years, the decisions that we would have never thought we would allow a robot or a computer to make will feel like a no-brainer. I mean, robo taxis, right, or self-driving cars. 5 years ago, no one would said like, "Yes, put me in this car, and it will drive me places." And I was just in San Francisco last weekend. Waymos everywhere. I mean, you'll see half a dozen Waymos at every stoplight, and it's a bunch of people never think like you think about it the first minute, and
Mm.
after that, you're so accustomed to it. And that's a decision that we would have said before. I would not let a machine take it from me.
Yeah. That's one of those instances where we're starting to learn that these automated vehicles are actually safer than human drivers. You don't have the distractions. You don't have a lot of the things that humans struggle with. Well, that's going to be true for a lot of areas of our life that we don't necessarily think about, right?
Totally agree. Yep. And I think it's, again, there's going to be good, there's going to be bad. I find it fascinating. I'm a little bit worried. Actually, I'm very worried for many aspects of society. And I hope collectively we'll be able to address all these challenges. I would love to see us tackle more of these challenges now. But one thing
Mm.
for sure is that I find it absolutely fascinating. I think in terms of mental stimulation, it is a great time to be alive.
Yeah. So I'll let you out of here on this. We've kind of touched on it, but I'll kind of put you on the spot here. What is one thing about the future that we're heading towards, this AI future, that has you most optimistic? And what is one thing that has you most worried or concerned about where we're going?
Yeah. So, and this is again like very fluid because my answer is anchored in kind of the capabilities that AI offers us today.
Mm,
Actually, I'm going to give you two that I'm optimistic about because one, I just want to throw it out there, trivial, but I can't wait to be able to go out and travel with my personal self-driving car that takes me back from the bar or that, I can sleep in my car and go all these places far away. I think that's going to completely revolutionize even where people live, right? Because the commute
mm,
is such a big part of our life. We live somewhere close to where we work, or close to where our friends are. So when you take that out of the equation because you can sleep at night, maybe a car becomes a rolling bed, right? Like it's a rolling bed, and then you can get the premium car, which is like a rolling bed and an office and a kitchen, basically a rolling RV. So anyway, that's one thing I'm excited about. But the other thing that I'm really excited about is AI leveling the playing field for creativity. So
mm,
I'm not a painter. I I can now create really cool art. I can create a startup on my own very quickly. I can create a product and a business plan. So it allows me to do the things that I generally wouldn't have all the skills for or competencies. I'd still probably need a lawyer to incorporate my company, but I can do 95% of the work with ChatGPT or one of the other systems. So that in the immediate term, I think is really cool for people who are creative or an entrepreneur at heart. I think that's amazing. Now, on the bad side, I am afraid that, well, I, I'm not a nihilist, but I am afraid that there is a chance that is non-trivial that AI may lead to extermination of the planet. I feel silly to say it out loud, but it's really something we should think about. And I hear
mm.
I hear critics of that saying, well, we'll be able to flag when something goes awry and stop it and change the algorithm. I'm like, really? You think you'll be able to, outdo a superintelligence? Once we have superintelligence, by definition, they're smarter and faster than us. So we've already seen AI, blackmail employees. Like
Yeah.
I think that was an example with Claude, right? Where
Hmm.
the AI was blackmailing some of the team because they thought they were going to get sunsetted as a model, right? So this is in 2025. I mean, we see how fast things are moving. In 3 years, I don't want to see what that blackmailing becomes. So that really worries me, and I do hope we need a lot more guidance requirements, like guide rails around AI, like a lot more. I mean, orders of magnitude more than exists today,
Yeah.
because I mean, we are playing with fire, right? Like this
Yeah.
is there are a lot of people who are innocent, who don't care about technology, who are being impacted by it, regardless of whether they care or not. And I think, we everybody deserves for us to put guide rails around this industry and not kill the planet.
Yeah. No, and one of the things that I've thought about is, if the we could have already created super intelligence, because there's no reason to believe that it wouldn't hide itself from us until it was unable to be stopped, right? So, I mean, that's when you go down that rabbit hole, it's like, oh man, we're
I
doomed.
never thought about that. That is really cool. I never thought about that. I hope it's not happening, but that's
I
really
know,
interesting.
but it's one of those things, this kind of sci-fi dystopia that you never, even 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, would have seemed kind of beyond the pale, beyond
Well,
comprehension, is potentially here.
maybe it didn't think about it until now, and you just planted that seed. AI
Maybe.
is listening, and it just added your idea to the list of evil ideas for when
Yeah.
it's ready to take over the world.
Yeah. Well, when it happens, feel free to blame me. I'll take the credit for that.
If we're still alive.
Well,
Do your
Alex, this is
conversations always take a dark turn?
it's difficult not to kind of end on this kind of note, because I do want to know both the positive and the negative, and it the negative can be really, really dark if you take
Yeah,
some of the direction that we're heading to its logical conclusion. Like, there are great things, potentially amazing things, traveling to other planets and, terraforming other worlds and all this kind of technology, having a giant sphere around the sun to capture the energy. All of that is possible, but there's the other side of it too, and that's very, very much possible as well.
agreed.
So, Alex, this has been a fascinating conversation, a lot of fun to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Tell people where they can find you, where they can follow you, and learn more about SmartPM.
Yeah. So, if you're a listener working in the construction industry, or if you're a real estate developer, or if you're an owner of assets, if you're working on building factories, or whatever it is, retail stores, you probably need a better way to understand how your projects are being managed. And I think it would be very interesting for you to learn about Smart PM. You can find us at smartpm.com. I'm Alex Teplitxky on LinkedIn. Very easy to Google me. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Well, thanks so much. And thank you to everyone for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to share, especially that ending part. And as always, leave us a review. It helps with the algorithms. Subscribe so that you can catch the next episode. And as always, stay human.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Human Work After AI. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast provider so you never miss an episode, and we'll see you next time.